And for the general public, I just cliche, just help as many people as possible. You know what I mean? And provide them content they want to read so that they can improve their quality of life.
Do you ever have so many questions and no one to ask, so they're just wasting away on Google searches you'll forget about in an hour or so?
We had that same problem, and that's why we created the RD2BE podcast, a resource for dietetic and nutrition students looking for answers that their peers don't have.
We are students Macy and Emily and registered dietitian Carl Barnes. We engage in conversations and learn from RDs.
Join us weekly as we gain insight into the unique journeys of registered dietitians all over the country.
Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your registered dietitian host, Carl Barnes. This is our podcast where each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian to really highlight the diversity of opportunity in the field. We've slowly been expanding to more than just United States dietitians and having some Canadian dietitians share their experiences from north of the border, but really to not just talk about being a dietitian, but to give that feedback and advice to RD2BE, to students coming up into the profession. And the end game is really to make sure that the next generation of registered dietitians are better prepared and can do more than the current batch can. So today, very honored to be here with Andy the RD. Andy DeSantis is here with us. Laundry list of accomplishments and stuff, and I'm going to let you plug and play with whatever you want to highlight, but thanks so much for being here.
No, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting.
Great, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us today, Andy. I can get started with the interview. So while growing up, did you ever see yourself as an author or owning your own private practice, or where did you envision your life to be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's a good question. I think, it was around probably 17 or 18 when I decided that I was really into nutrition. And then I kind of always thought after that point that I would do it for a career. And so that was kind of always, from that point onward, it was kind of always what I was going to do. Writing, I've enjoyed writing, and I actually had writing jobs as a teenager. I mean, so it always came kind of naturally to me. In my head, sure, I said, I would like to write a book or something. You don't actually necessarily think it's going to happen, or you don't really understand what it entails, as a younger person. But I guess it was my plan when I started blogging and writing. I was like, just going to write as many articles as possible, promote them as well as I could, mostly to try and increase visibility for my business. But then also with the kind of the hope in the back of my head, it would lead to an opportunity to write a book, which it ended up doing. And in terms of working for myself, I mean, I guess that was my dream. Now it's different once you're in it, and it's not really anything like what you think. It's a lot of work, and it takes time to build. And the tools that were available to me 5 years ago, and the number of mentors is not as much as there are now. Now there's so many examples of successful solo practitioners. So it's a great time for anyone who wants to get into it, obviously. And I even coach some people to help them do that. But yeah, more or less, this is kind of where I wanted to be, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome because, you said you could see yourself writing books, and you've published 8 cookbooks, and there are 2 in your background right now.
Yeah, there's 2 in the background, and it's cool. And some of the books all are cookbooks in terms of they have recipes. Some of them are more robust in terms of nutrition information. Some of them are more mild. I definitely like the writing part more, but I've written books that vary in their, let's say, their scientific content.
So what advice would you give to students that are interested in pursuing, writing cookbooks or even blogs and stuff like that, but don't really feel that confident in their writing ability?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, you have to start somewhere, I mean, now from the perspective now as someone who's been coaching people on writing, I would say, listen, get someone to help you, right? Because I've helped a lot of aspiring writers understand how to leverage writing for the web, and how, what to write about, how to structure articles and promote them. But I mean, you got to start somewhere. If I look back to my posts from 5-6 years ago, I kind of cringe at them, oh damn, this is not really the high level of writing that I expect of myself now. But you got to write 1 article before you write 10, and you only get better by kind of, making mistakes and evolving your style. Practice practice makes perfect. And there's plenty of examples of people like myself and many others who are writing to look at, and to, even if you don't hire anyone, if it's not in the budget, you can at least look at their structure and their style and the types of topics they write about and use that for inspiration. And the number one piece of advice I would give to young writers is like, okay, yes, you can have people you look up to, but don't let that stop you from writing or investigating or discussing topics that interest you, because a lot of times people will hold themselves back because something's already been done before. But unless you're inventing Uber or something, like most of the things you're going to do have been done before. So just do it your way, because there's going to be a market and an audience for people who want to know your take and your, they want to hear it from you because you have your own story, you're your own person, your own journey that they resonate with, and so they may value your words more than mine, for any number of reasons. So yeah, that's some advice I would say, and just grow your social media following, because there are publishers looking for potential authors, but you have to demonstrate competency in writing, commitment to writing, and it obviously helps if you have a following on social, because it's easier to promote books, and that's part of it. You know what I mean? If you get huge on social, you could probably just write your own book. You don't even need a publisher. So the options are numerous from that perspective.
So in addition to blogs and cookbooks and books that you've written, did you write any like articles or anything like research articles, or is it strictly, cookbooks and blogs?
Yeah, so I've not engaged in any sort of like published research writing. So my audience, my writing style, and the type of things I like to do, I like to translate research at a moderate level for the general public / for fellow practitioners in a digestible way. I think that's my niche. So I'm going to save you the trouble of like looking at the most recent studies. I'm going to translate that into like in a digestible way and present it in an efficient way, so that anyone out there who wants to know the latest evidence or the consensus on important topics can do so through me. Like that was kind of my dream, is to be a reliable source of nutrition information of all types. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm engaged in.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people shy away from reading those articles because of, the big words and not really understanding what it means. And so it's great that you provide that resource to break it down, almost like a research article for dummies kind of thing, like, breaking it down so students and people that are interested in certain topics can really grasp all of the knowledge that the article is sharing with us.
Yeah. That's pretty much the goal. And I think I walk the line of like being more certain articles. Some articles are probably more suitable for colleagues and nutritionists, some articles more suitable for general public. The thing is, I like writing as an art. So like I'll write at a certain level to fulfill my own like desires, and not just to make it at a level of writing that's generally applicable, because writing is also a selfish endeavor, because like it's very personally rewarding for me. You know what I mean? To write. So yeah, that's part of it as well.
Great. So before you, started working for yourself, I noticed that you worked at Canadian Sugar Institute. So what did you do at that job?
Yeah, so that was part of my internship. So which is like I was there for a while. That's a very honestly that was a great job, because I was the classic kid like, oh, sugar is garbage, this and that. And like what happens is when you work for an advocacy organization like that maybe is not in line with your like, I don't know what's the word, like idealist beliefs about nutrition, you learn a lot about like the real world and like the fact that you understand actually what role sugar does play, the science behind it, and it makes you more balanced in your approach, which then can transfer to how you view all other topics. Because when I was working there, in my head I'm just like, yeah, okay, it's sugar, right? Like sugar is like the worst thing ever, this and that, right? And then you learn a more objective way of thinking about things. And it's not like, sugar is what it is. Like, I mean, it has obviously important purposes in food science, and certainly it makes, very nutritious foods palatable to people who they might otherwise have been palatable to. So like you can go on and on about the usefulness of it, right? And of course it's demonized as well a lot. Because I'm not talking about, obviously there's sugars in a wide range of products of varying utility, we'll say. But yeah, it teaches you objectivity, and I think that was a great choice for me. If I'm being honest, I chose to work there because it was relatively close to where I was living at the time. But in the end, it was probably one of the better experiences I've ever had. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, distance definitely plays a role into like where people work. So, I mean, I'm glad that it provided, two benefits for you. What did
Right.
you really take from that job though? Like if you had, people that were listening that were debating going there for their internship, what piece of, like what bump would you give them to continue, going there?
Well, look, I mean, it forces you, it challenges some beliefs you may have. Now, I'm not saying everyone had the same beliefs I did when I was at that age, but I'm willing to bet, I mean, look, people are growing up a different way now, right? So like this was like 10 years ago or something. So it's a little bit different. But in my time, it's like I had a certain mindset, and working there challenges your preset notions, which I think is so important in our field, right? Because it's very easy, I'm sure you guys can appreciate, to get pigeonholed into certain beliefs or into looking at things in a certain way, and being forced to challenge that and to have someone challenge you on your own beliefs about sugar, like that is so valuable, because that's less likely to happen if you only work at places that are just fully aligned with how you operate. You know what I mean? So if you have an opportunity to work for Kellogg's or for Pepsi or stuff like that, because in the real world, people are interacting with these products. Like you can't just pretend they don't exist. People, like, these are massively popular products, and you need to understand how to speak about them at a high level and in an objective, neutral fashion. And those are the kind of skills you get from working in a place like that. And like again, those are transferable skills that will apply to many other things that you encounter in your career.
So what skills do you think you took from that job opportunity?
I think, well, yeah, you learn objectivity for sure, right? And it forces. I think that's probably one of them. You know what I mean? Purely because you're forced to look at something where your baseline instinct is like disdain, but you're forced to step back and like actually assess the state of the evidence and things like that. And I think that's something that a lot of people today would benefit from, because there's obviously division in beliefs and certain things in the world of nutrition, but there's merits to different sides of arguments. I think that objectivity is actually helps me a lot, not only as a dietitian but as a writer, but also as any rotation, the knowledge you gain. Like sugar is such a popular topic in like modern discourse, and to know what I know about the statistics and the role sugar plays in food science, like it allows me to speak about it in a non-dogmatic way, and to kind of like break away from the dogmatism that sugar is this or sugar is that, and to understand like the role it plays. So you learn what you learn, like actual learning, and then at a higher level, it's like you learn how to like understand how to have your beliefs challenged, and how to look at things that on the surface may not align with your beliefs, but how to look at them in an objective way, because that's very important. So I'd say, yeah, hopefully that kind of explains it pretty well.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important for us to think of things, especially going into the field that we're going into, to think objectively and not just based on, our opinions or our predetermined, thoughts and feelings about it. So I know,
Right.
so I know that you got a master's of public health. So what benefits do you think that your MPH provides you compared to those that do not have a master's?
It gives you the extra letters on your name, which is nice. Like it's an interesting one, right? Because I've only ever done that course, so it's a really, people ask me this a lot. It's hard to compare. I mean, it grants you more time to become more mature, because I think as a dietitian, one of the things is you're out pretty quick, right? If it's your first career, you're out there helping people with potentially like really complicated things pretty quick. So you could argue maybe it gives you one more year to enhance your state of understanding, to become more mature as an individual. That you could argue. Obviously, it exposes, like for me personally, it exposed me to different types of placements. It exposed me to thinking about like the dissemination of information differently, and to learn about that. And obviously, it's a massive part of what I do, right? On Instagram, blogging, writing. I was able to let's say cultivate those skills more as a result of the time of my master's. And yeah, I mean, it's I'm a bit far removed from it now, so it's harder and harder to draw specific examples. But those are some of the strengths, I guess, of going into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So did you get your master's before or after your brand, Andy the RD?
Oh, it was definitely before, right? And that's another thing. I started pretty late. I mean, that's on social media and stuff like that, right? I always tell people, like, the number one thing is just I would have started earlier. All the stuff I'm doing, and all these young, these young up and comers who are like doing their pages on undergrad. I mean, you're gonna be in such a good position for success in entrepreneurship as a result. And that's probably my only regret, is like not starting sooner. So no, I mean, I graduated, got my first job, worked that contract, and then was in a bit of a purgatory. Then I created Andy the RD. So that's how it played out. So I had already had a job. I had already completed a contract as like a working professional before I started.
Do you think that you would have benefited from a master's of business administration, or are you happy with your MPH choice?
I mean, my MPH was a combined program, so I was never going to do like an MBA RD. It was just not, at the time, it wasn't on the table. So I can't really say I regret it one way or another. Yeah, I mean, an MBA would be cool. You know, I think obviously the business side of things is perhaps, like, I have the passion, the work rate. I have, like, you know, I'm pretty creative. I'm good at writing. I'm good at what I do. But the business side of things is probably my weakness. And so yeah, I mean, I may have benefited more from that, to be perfectly honest, in hindsight. But certainly something to consider as well for the future generations.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned that you wish that you were, doing social media and blogging earlier. So
Sure.
what benefits do you think you get from writing blogs and doing social media now?
Well, I mean, so there's personal benefits and there's professional benefits. I mean, the personal benefits, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I mean, writing is like such a personally rewarding tool for me. You know what I mean? And it's created. So that's kind of a big question. I'll try and break it down. I mean, so basically now I'm at the position, like, so I dedicate a lot of energy and time in writing, right? And what that allows, and I'm about to make a post on this on my social media today. I mean, that allows you to have great diversity in how you make money, essentially, right? So, which I like variety in what I do day to day. So on any given day, I can make money talking to people. I could make money writing articles. I might be writing a book. You know, you never know. I like that variety. So I could have quiet time, write articles that I'm getting paid for, and I talk to my clients. And I get the best of both worlds, because those are both. I love both equally, but I wouldn't want to do just one or just the other with all my time. You know what I mean? I understand there are higher level of orders of business, like making programs and stuff like that. I also do writing coaching, like I said. But writing, first of all, increases your visibility. You know what I mean? So I wrote an article recently that actually caught some keywords on Google, and like it's got 10,000 views on my website in a week. So like these are the kind of things that happen when you understand like how to like write, how to title articles and stuff like that. Like it creates a massive amount of visibility, draws the attention to your brand for free, essentially. It makes you a better professional, because guess what? Like, you know, the modern client wants to speak about modern topics, and it's not enough from my perspective. Like, so like let's use intermittent fasting or the keto diet for an example. Okay, these are divisive topics, to say the least, but it's not enough to dismiss them. Like the modern client wants to have like a high level conversation about these topics, and if all you're going to say is just a fad diet, well, it's not going to cut it. Like they're going to find somebody else. You know what I mean? You need to be able to speak, you know, in a confident and informed way about the strengths and limitations. So I've written on both of these topics, independent on my viewpoints on them. I've written about them, I've looked at the research, and that allows me to then have high level conversations with my clients, right? So that is a massive professional benefit of writing in and of itself. I mean, not to mention the fact that then I get to write books. You know what I mean? So, and then social and writing, they tie in together very well, because social media is a vehicle to promote your written content. You know what I mean? Because being good at writing is one thing, but you have to be good at promoting it so people read it, right? So they tie in together, and that was always my plan. Now I do it at a certain level. I don't do it at the best level. There are people who do it better than me, but I do it at the level that I can do it at, which is I tie in my written content to my social media. And so if you see my Instagram, I do things through a humorous lens when possible, just because it's enjoyable, but it's never just frivolous. There's always a connection to real science or my writing. It's never just a joke for the sake of a joke. It's actually always related to nutrition messaging and writing very often. So yeah, I mean, it just opens up. So yeah, I mean, I'm rambling at this point, but it just opens up so many doors in terms of what your career could look like, in terms of the diversity in business activities you can be involved in, which for me, I value very much. And there's people who their whole career is built off of social media from day one, and that was like their plan, and good for them. I mean, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? You know what I mean? Okay, well, I mean, there's a number of reasons why you would want to do something else, but generally speaking, it's very appealing to do that, in my view.
So what advice would you give to students to build their social media following, whether it's on, a website they have or social
Sure.
media pages they have?
Well, look, again, you got two options. I mean, the first option these days, I mean, if you let's say you take two individuals, one who has no like, say, capital, no money to work with to start, or someone who maybe has a little bit of financial freedom. If you have some financial freedom, probably you hire someone to help you at the beginning, to give you, because you know what? I toiled for years to arrive at my strategy. I could have saved that time realistically if there was an abundance of coaches out there. Just like I help people with social and writing, like, it's going to save you a lot of time to just like learn how to do it properly at the beginning. You know what I mean? So that is, if you have money, number one. If you don't have money, all good. You know what I mean? You have enough people to idolize. That's not the best word. And to inspire you, you can go out there, find a niche or that you are like compelled to work in. Find an example of someone successful in that niche, and it's there for you. Just grab it. You see what that person's doing, and you can use what they're doing as inspiration for your own platform, because they're following a formula that's successful. They didn't invent that formula. They're just following a formula that works from someone else. So there's no reason why you can't then replicate that in your own vision for yourself. Now, there's certain nuances beneath the surface you may not be able to figure out just by looking, right? That's where a coach comes in. But there's a lot you can do just if you're savvy enough to look around. And yeah, so that's what I would say.
So based on the books you've written and the blogs that you've written, what has been your favorite thing that you've posted or published?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Like in terms of like, for books, the two books I'm most, so I've written the two books I'm proud of. I wrote a pescatarian book, and I actually ended up becoming pescatarian shortly after that. So like, that's just a kind of funny how that worked out. And so that I really like that one. I think it was one of my better selling books. And so that was fun. And then my other one was my book on acid reflux, for sure. The reason why that was very important to me is, I mean, first of all, acid reflux medication is among the most prescribed medications in North America, which means that acid reflux has a negative quality of life consequences for a large number of people. That's the main reason, because I love helping people like to improve their quality of life, right? And so something like acid reflux, a lot of that, there's certain strategies you use to resolve it that people just aren't aware of, and the quality of life implications are pretty big. So, and again, that book did pretty well. So I would say those two are the ones I'm most proud of. Yeah.
So did you do research on those topics and then, decide to write about them, or like what made you choose those opposed to other topics?
Yeah, so basically, how I operate now in terms of how I've been writing books, I'll get presented options and I choose the ones that I'm most compelled by. So that's how my writing career has gone, right? And so, there's a number of different ways people can arrive at book deals, but very often what will happen is you put the work in, these publishers, realistically, these publishers are looking for competent writers and Instagram people to write books. So like, you only have to just show them that you want it, you know what I mean? And they'll offer you a book. Like, okay, it's a bit more challenging than that, but you know what I mean? Like, it's more or less, that's what it is. Like, it's just how you acquire clients on Instagram. It's the same thing. Show people that you want clients, like, and put forth the level of effort to like, make that become the case. And it generally occurs like that. So yeah, basically, long-winded answer. I just get offered topics and I pick the ones that I like. And so I generally like to pick topics that are applicable to a large number of people. Like, I've written a cholesterol lowering book, and if you look at the statistics in Canada for men specifically, aged like adult men, like cholesterol medication by far is the most prescribed medication. So anything that has like the impact, like to help people like reduce symptoms, medication mitigation, like having less medication, like stuff like that, I'm really into helping the most people possible, because otherwise my practice is all one-on-one. And so yeah, I like to balance, interacting with a large number of people and then interacting with just one person at a time. I don't like the in-between, you know what I mean? I don't see myself doing group coaching, but I like both extremes.
That's great to hear. So at least in the United States, I can't really speak for Canada. I know that a lot of dietitians tend to be female. So in Canada, is it predominantly female, or is it split, or what does it look like up there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's like 95-5, right? I don't think it's going to be too different. In my master's program, there were no guys. In my undergrad, there were a few. But yeah, you're looking at 95-5, if not more. Yeah, probably. I don't have the actual numbers, but last time I checked, it's around there.
Yeah. So how do you feel as a male dietitian in, a predominantly female job? Because I know at least in most settings, it's usually male dominant and then females
Sure.
are not as represented.
You know, I think I think at first, like, I mean, I didn't spend much time thinking. I don't think I really realized it, first of all, until I sat in my first class in a circle. It was like an interactive class, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. But when I was younger, people were telling me, oh yeah, it's going to be an easy ride because you're a guy, you're going to get preferential treatment. You'll hear stuff like that. Or this is my own experience, right? They'll say you're going to be a shoo-in for all the positions you apply for. Like, you'll hear stuff like that. I mean, when you're younger, yeah, okay, sure, you let that get to your head. I mean, that wasn't actually my experience. I think I just got into my program. I didn't get into all the things I applied for, so I didn't have a lot of choices. So just to put that out there. And I think it went from a fascination to just to a general like indifference. And like, I'm at this point now, I don't really spend time thinking about it. It's just like, I'm just used to it. You know what I mean? I suppose like I take it for granted on some level, because I guess being a guy in a female dominated field, you stand out more inevitably, you know what I mean? So I guess I take that for granted. I suppose it's probably an advantage on some level. Anytime you stand out, for whatever the reason, good or bad, you're gonna probably be at some advantage on social media, I guess. So I probably do take that for granted, but otherwise, at this point in my career, it's not something I spend too much time thinking about. It's just kind of what it is.
Have you faced any hardships as a male dietitian?
Um, I think any hardships I faced, I think are just a result of just life as it is, not necessarily being a male. I think there are advantages to being a male sometimes as well, because some clients, for example, let's say teenage males are clients I work with a lot, and I think there's advantages to being a youngish, let's say youngish, because I'm not young anymore, a youngish male, right? I mean, you're just going to resonate with them more. I mean, potentially, right? And certainly, like, their parents see it that way, so they come to work with me. You know what I mean? So and then it's not unusual. I will get calls from wives, and it's like, listen, like, my husband won't listen to me. He needs to talk. Like, maybe he'll listen to you because you're a guy. So those are their words, not mine. And so you do get stuff like that with some moderate frequency, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. So I also know that in like our initial, going back and forth, you mentioned that you have eaten kale for 95% of the day for the past 10 years or so.
Sure.
So why? Like, is that
Yeah.
is that a preference? Do you like, is it for health reasons? What
Yeah. So
as you were wearing a kale shirt?
yeah. I have a kale painting in my office as well, if you've seen it. So it's lovely. Yeah. So I think what I said was, like, just to clarify, not for 95% of the day, for 95% of the days. So not that I eat it all day, that I eat it every day for the majority of days. Just there's a bit of a difference there too.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I totally misread
No.
that then.
That's that's a very, very fair misreading. Yeah. I mean, so the funny thing is, like, I'll tell you the story because it is actually an interesting one. It stems back to my teenage years, because there was a point in my teenage years where I wasn't really engaged in my food intake. Like, you would probably describe me as someone who didn't have a very nutritious style of eating. Okay. I eventually decided, because like my health was suffering as a result, that I should probably do something about it. But I was also quite lazy. So I looked for the path of least resistance to increase the nutrient density in my diet. So what I resorted to at that time is eating like boxes of spinach and then raw bell peppers, because I felt like I could do this every day with minimal effort, right? And I can get vegetables every day by doing this, by eating this after dinner or whatever. That's what I did. That was my strategy, my path of least resistance. So I did that for a number of years. And then somewhere along the line, my friend and I dispute this. My friend believes he told me about kale and I should try kale. And he's like, it's better than spinach. I'm like, I think I tried it to replace the spinach and kept the bell pepper, like, basically. And like, I liked it. And I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. So kale is the thing. And then it just became a part of my identity. Like, I'm not saying this is a good thing to do. It's just the way, like, it's one of my idiosyncrasies, I suppose. Like, it's just ended up being something I do. And so, I'll eat kale and bell peppers, like, almost every day. And just all stemming from that my teenage years, and my path of least resistance approach, just eating vegetables, because eating raw kale is very easy from the vegetable perspective. And so that's literally what I do. Yeah. It's not a gimmick. It's just truly, that's what I do majority of days of the year for the last 10 years.
Do you, incorporate it in meals, or do you just eat, raw kale and peppers?
Yeah, I literally just eat raw kale and peppers. Yeah. I prefer it that way. Yeah. So, Um, yeah, I'm a little bit unusual, I suppose, but just they're literally old habits die hard, and it works for me, I guess. I eat other vegetables too sometimes, but literally, yeah, that's what I do, and it's just become such a big part, and I truly love it, right? So it's become part of my brand. Like when my coaching service is called Calligraphy, I have a lot of kale clothing. I have a kale painting in my office, like I said, and I embrace it at this point because why not? It's a genuine aspect of my life, and that's it.
So since you mentioned calligraphy, how did you get that started?
Yeah, I mean that's another example of my lack of business prowess, right? So I mean, realistically, like the word calligraphy came to my mind. I now whether it was out there or not before. I'm in the process of like trying to trademark it in Canada, but it just came to my mind as like a fusion of like health and nutrition, and kale, which is my favorite food, and then calligraphy, which is like creative writing essentially, right? And I knew I loved writing. I written books, and I knew I wanted like, and I feel like writing is undervalued, right? Generally, people like love audio and video, and obviously it's wonderful. Both are wonderful, don't get me wrong, I love it myself, and it has a role, but my view is that writing is just undervalued. So I want to essentially, as a side business, as part of everything else I'm doing, I want to start coaching people on writing. So I came up with the logo. I paid a bunch of money for a video. I printed all these t-shirts. I brought the t-shirts to Fancy, but I didn't really like, I was so busy at growing my practice, I didn't market it properly. But over the years, I had a little more time. And as I got a little bit bigger and I wrote more books, people were like, okay, there's something here. So my client base has grown. So I've helped a decent number of people with their writing right now. And I have a few on my roster. And I'm about to make a post today on my social media about this. And so it's basically just like a creative writing coaching service to like, help young writers understand what to write about, how to use writing to grow their business, giving feedback on their writing style, all of the above. Yeah, so that's what it is.
Is this more of a passion project? Is it
I
because
would describe it as that, yeah.
did you wish you had that type of service when you were, going through undergrad and all those things?
Not necessarily, because like for me, like I don't like taking advice, so I wouldn't have like got a writing coach anyway.
Mhm.
So no, I it's not because I was missing it. It's just because I love, like I'm so passionate about writing. It's just, and I think anyone who works with me, I'm also like quite creative in terms of like people can present me rough ideas of like where they want to go, and I'm very good at distilling that into actual topics for them to write about. And very often people I work with are like, okay, damn, I never would have come up with that or that angle. And that's a skill that I've fostered just over the years of just putting in the work myself, because I do have I'm good at writing, not technically, like I'm not good at commas, but I'm good at storytelling with writing, you know what I mean, and disseminating information. But I'm also good at the creative aspect, which comes out in my social media with my humor, but also in terms of how I frame articles and how I come up with articles to write about. And this is me tooting my own horn at this point, but I think those are my some of my strengths. So
Well, it's good to, maximize on those strengths and make them opportunities. Before the podcast, we did reach out to our text platform and some students sent some questions in.
sure.
So the first one is, do you need certain credentials to promote working with teenagers or couples in nutrition for your private practice?
Um, Almost certainly not. Yeah, I can't see how you would expect. I mean, certainly not for couples. You know what I mean? There'll be absolutely no difference with working with one adult or two. I can't. I mean, maybe there's some state by state in the States, maybe, but as far as I know, I don't think there's anything. Teenagers, I can't. I mean, you want to have some level of comfort and competence with teenage nutrition, but beyond that, I mean, I suppose if there was a serious issue like a rare disorder, an eating disorder, maybe, not that you would want to have the right experience to be able to deal with that, right? But other than that, I don't believe there are special qualifications, as far as I know.
Is there any reason why you cater and I guess work with couples with nutrition, or is it just something that you've experienced once and you enjoyed? Or
Yeah, it's just a thing that people like to do, right? And so I have a general practice. So my practice is not defined by me; it's defined by my clients. Realistically, you know what I mean? For me, like I've talked with so many people, so many different issues that I enjoy the variety and of like not knowing what someone brings to the table within reason. Obviously, if someone has a very specific, complicated issue, like obviously I don't take them on, I'll refer them elsewhere. But for the most part, I'm competent enough, in part through my dedication to like writing and research and understanding the evidence, that I can deal with most low to moderate complexity patients, right, or clients. So I kind of let my clients come to me, tell me like what their problems are, and then I'll like reflect that on my website and my services as a result. So I don't come up with those topics. I change my website based on like who comes to talk to me, right? So I'm like a little bit different from that perspective. And at this point, having done this for so long as a general practitioner, I can't ever imagine niching down. Like I love certain subtopics, don't get me wrong, but the idea that I would only promote myself to talk about that, I just don't, I can't see it. I can't bring myself to do it. Even if it is better for business, I can't bring myself to do it.
So you wouldn't consider getting any credentials for like certain niche areas, or would you do that but just maintain your brand to be more general?
Well, I don't know that there are that many credentials for niche areas. Okay, there's diabetes educator, fair enough. And certainly if you're working with someone with insulin, like, yeah, you know what, you probably should have that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, if you have a patient with pre-diabetes, you know, on no medication, you don't need like, I mean, yeah, you need to have an understanding of the you know, strategies to lower A1C and all this stuff, but you don't need a special credential as far as I'm concerned. I found many people with pre-diabetes. I've worked at the Canadian Diabetes Association though, so it's a little bit different because I have more knowledge than most in that area. But yeah, I mean, I don't know there's that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know there's that many special niche. I suppose there are, as I think about, there are sports nutrition and stuff like that. So I'm probably a little bit wrong, but those fall into highly specialized categories. So fair enough. Okay, like yeah, there are some.
Yeah. And then another question we got was, what has fueled your charisma throughout your career?
Yeah, I think like, I don't know. I think part of it is like, I'd like to think it's like natural, but I think I do truly love what I do. And it's to somehow land on this ability to like, you know, work into things I love, like humor and writing, into like my career. It's like, how can it's hard for me not to just be like enjoying myself. You know what I mean? It's very nice to be able to do those things. And yeah, some of the things I've gotten away with in terms of like actually being like useful for sharing information, like some of the jokes I've come up with, like have been quite well received. So it's quite a pleasure, quite a treat to be engaged with that stuff. And yeah, so yeah, I can't complain.
What is your favorite food that you've cooked or put in your cookbook?
Yeah, it's a good question. My like, I'll exclude kale from this for obvious reasons. For me, like some of my more recent curiosities, bok choy, butternut squash. These are things I've only started really eating a lot recently. So like those two are I mean, like I've got 8 books, so like are those in one of my books? For sure they are, like somewhere. You know, some of the books have 100 recipes, so they're definitely in there somewhere. Well, yeah, let's go with like lately I've been into like, yeah, bok choy, butternut squash have caught my fancy, shall we say.
Cool. And then when
No.
you come up with recipes for your cookbooks, is it based on, you know, what you've cooked? Like, where do you get those recipe ideas from?
Right. It's a good question, and it's something I should, I guess, discuss. So all of my books, basically, they're divided into 2 parts. They're divided into the nutrition guidance, which I write, and then there's the recipes themselves, which I provide the parameters for and the guidelines around, but for which I have a recipe developer, because recipe development is not my game. So all of my books are done by all the recipes in my books. I consult on, like I'm like, listen, these are the key foods that need to be there. These are the parameters for the different micronutrients that we need to honor the theme of the book. And then of course I do look over and improve the recipes to make sure that they're in line with that. But the actual development is delegated to a recipe developer, just because that's not my skill set. The recipe developers, sometimes their name is on the book, sometimes they prefer to be like ghost recipe developers. But I've worked with a number of different people. One of them was a fellow dietitian, Julie Andrews, which was like one of my first books and like my most well-reviewed book. So she's awesome. She's from Wisconsin. So shout out Julie. Yeah, so that's actually how it works. I don't see myself ever doing recipe development. It's just like not my skill set.
So out of the recipes that you have in your books, how many of them have you actually cooked? If you could, like, if you think like,
honestly, that's a good question. A few, like literally a few, if I'm being perfectly honest. Because it's not because I don't just cook. I just generally don't cook recipes. Now, that being said, I have a lot of people in my circle who cook them and trial them and stuff like that. So like, you know, the feedback is generally good. I'll also say though, like my books, I'll be perfectly honest, my books are at a certain level, right? Like, you know, this is not the Oshi Glows like cookbook or something else. It's not at that level. They are what they are. They're good, solid books, and you know, I'm proud of them. But right now they're at a certain level. So, you know, is it going to be the most epic recipes you're ever going to see? No, but they're solid recipes that fulfill the nutritional guidelines and the theme of the book, and they serve their purpose from that perspective. And yeah, they taste good, I like to think.
I'm sure they do. So when you have your recipe developer, sending them over to you before it gets published and stuff, what key things are you looking for, and what things pop out? You're like, I don't want that in there. Like what makes you say yes and what makes you say no?
Well, I mean, it depends on the theme of the book, right? So for example, when we're looking at, I don't know, a pescatarian cookbook versus a cholesterol lowering cookbook versus a low sodium cookbook. I mean, yeah, there's going to be overlap, but there's certain principles we're looking for. So let's say, in the pescatarian cookbook, am I going to be concerned that each serving is a certain sodium content? Probably not. I mean, within reason. Am I going to be concerned about that in a DASH diet cookbook? Yeah, obviously, I'm definitely going to be concerned about that, right? So there's those components, and then it's also the spread of the ingredients. Like, so for example, I want to make sure in a cholesterol lowering cookbook, like soy has good cholesterol lowering potential. So if I don't feel in the first round of ingredients, in the first round of recipes, that soy has been sufficiently well represented, I'm going to say, listen, so there needs to be more tofu recipes, there needs to be more tempeh recipes. So those are examples of actual back and forth that I've gone through.
Great. And I guess I can wrap it up by asking you, what impact do you want to have on registered dietitians? I guess I don't want to say regular people, but people that aren't pursuing dietetics and RD2Bs.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's different. It's different for all of the above. I mean, for younger, I think anyone who's like further along in their career, I mean, it'd be an honor to be looked at as like an inspiration or a source of inspiration for younger people. So I'd like to have that, hopefully some sort of indirect influence, and then ideally some direct influence, like working with people, helping them improve their writing and stuff like that. And for my colleagues, obviously, again, like I would hope they look upon me as someone who like does things in a unique way, but also in a professional way, and offers something of value to them through my writing. And also who helps them with their writing as well, because I have a lot of clients who are dietitians who are trying to break into the world of writing. And for the general public, I just cliche, just help as many people as possible. You know what I mean? And provide them content they want to read so that they can improve their quality of life.
Great. Well, thank you so much for, taking time out of your day to talk to us. We really appreciate it. And I learned a lot. And actually, I ordered one of your books on Amazon. So hopefully it's coming in soon.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for doing that. I appreciate it. Make sure you leave a review.
Will do.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on board. And as cliche as it is, I think that's a perfect answer too, it's helping as many people. I think that's what draws so many people to this profession. And you're in good company, because I'm known for hand to mouth with raw spinach leaves. So
there you go. Yeah. That was my life as well, not too long ago, before kale.
Thanks again. Lots of great stuff for all the RD2Bs, and for those listening, stay tuned each week for another awesome episode.